Now, Ghana has been ranked among 76, bottom actually, among 76 countries across the world in the biggest ever global rankings on mathematics and science. Singapore heads the table, followed by Hong Kong, and in fact, all other African countries cited in the report were at the bottom. Morocco and South Africa, for example, were ranked 73 and 75 respectively. The think tank which conducted the survey, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, says the comparisons based on test scores in these countries show the link between education and economic growth. So why are we struggling with maths and sciences? Is it that we're not serious or have shifted priorities to non-science-based education? What is the link between maths and science and economic growth? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. Now, according to the education director of the group which conducted the survey, I quote, "The idea is to give more countries, rich and poor, access to comparing themselves against the world's education leaders to discover their relative strengths and weaknesses and to see what the long-term economic gains from improved quality in schooling could be for them." So my question is, what led to Ghana's decline over the years to warrant us popping up at the bottom of the maths and science table? Professor Sichofa Anku is the president of the Ghana Mathematics Society. He's joining us for discussion on the matter. Prof, we're grateful that you could join us.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, so Prof, thank you very much for joining us. So what happened?
My pleasure.
What happened to maths and sciences in Ghana?
This is a very interesting question. There is a lot for us to do in terms of science and mathematics. I keep saying all the time that, you see, everything we do contains mathematics. And the principles and methods of mathematics ensure the efficiency of the things we do, and that everybody can do mathematics. So if we want, a developed Ghana, we need to be very serious about science and mathematics. Because they can make our development meaningful. Because without the mathematics that's related to the science, everything we do will be shoddy. And I keep saying this all the time. You see, but it's for us to listen to it and make sure that we do something different, something realistic about the situation. You see, there's so much teaching of theory, and we don't relate our theory to practice.
To practice.
That has been the problem.
I see.
Mathematics is so theoretical, and we can relate it to practice.
So, Prof, let me pause you briefly.
Okay.
Now, let's look at the problem. Is the problem structural, approach to teaching and learning, or like you said, theorizing too much of mathematics to make it uninteresting to students? What is it?
It is all the above that we talk about. They all have a part to play. You see, the curriculum, the teachers, the students, they all have a part to play. We must adopt an eclectic approach to the whole problem. If we want to identify only one person and leave the rest, it will not work. But you see, the teacher has got a very major role to play, and a very, very important one at that.
The teacher. So the teacher is at the center of the whole rejuvenation or reversal of the negative trend, correct? Right.
So you see, differently with the Ministry of Education and DS. We have been organizing professional development for teachers. I finished one only last week, and I think I invited Joy FM to come and see what we're doing. We're trying to help them, see the teacher of mathematics differently. We introduce what you call practical mathematics.
Practical mathematics.
Where they don't only do theory, they do activity-based lessons in mathematics. So we got teachers from Volta region, Eastern region, and Greater Accra. They came for 2 weeks of training in how to teach mathematics differently. So they were here for 2 weeks, and we did so many things to make a difference because it was under the theme transformation. They need to transform their minds, the way they teach, the way they approach their subject. You see, the other thing I realized that we need teachers who have the content knowledge of mathematics and have the methodology that is appropriate for the various levels of students.
Right, Prof, I'll have you hold briefly. We'll pause on that. You mentioned that they need the appropriate methodology. We'll take that to the educationist, IK Jesse, who is joining us on the telephone line. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us. Hello, IK Jesse. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. Now, what has been the trend of the development of maths and science all these years?
It's not just science and maths. If you ask me, I would say it's the whole educational system. But since we are talking of maths and science, let us concentrate on that. For a very long time, not just this year when the report came out, for a very long time, pupils and students have developed some kind of mental block towards the teaching and learning of mathematics and science.
And why is this so, Doc? Do you think that it's because there are no opportunities for maths graduates in our economy or in our society?
You see, the point is that I don't know. People come to the classroom and they assume that mathematics is a very difficult subject. And, this perception is sometimes reinforced by the methods of teaching the subject. I'm sure there is a gentleman, Professor Anku, who has done a lot of work in that area. He's been trying to make maths very friendly, not an enemy.
That's right.
See, but still, again, sometimes I believe that some of the teachers whose work is to make maths interesting are not themselves very, very adequately trained for the subject. I'm not talking of every maths teacher, but some of them. We go through the system learning formulas and theorems. Today we are going to do geometry. Of all straight lines that can be drawn from a given angle, the perpendicular is the shortest. AOB is 90 degrees, Apollonius theorem. AOC is 50 degrees, Pythagoras theorem. QED.
Yeah, so it's just the same thing as Professor Anku was saying, that we have made the teaching.
He's an expert,
exactly.
But I share his views.
Exactly.
Again, it's the whole methodology. A teacher generally, whether he's teaching mathematics or English or whatever, must have a good knowledge of the subject. He must prepare very well. He must be willing to teach it. His delivery alone must make the subject interesting. Of course, a teacher must have motivation. There was a case where a basic school teacher went to a secondary school teacher on the very morning when he was going to teach a new concept for assistance. How much do you think this teacher could have delivered?
But Mr. Jesse, your presentation seems to focus only on the teacher. What about the student? What about civil society? What about
Yes, I'm coming to that. I've already said the pupil develops a mental block. You get my point?
Yes.
And then the old system of teaching us, and then sometimes, in the early days, we have something called mental. Early in the morning, 20 times so, and the skin will be hanging over your head. So that sometimes it seemed as if the teacher was more concerned about hitting you with a cane than getting the correct answer.
That's right.
Please, teachers of mathematics should not think I'm condemning everybody. We've had I'm sure if Professor Anku hadn't had a very good teacher of mathematics, he wouldn't be
where he is
this
today
because of making the subject interesting.
Exactly.
But generally, and the mathematics, the logic of mathematics can be very different from other subjects. And I would wish that teachers must themselves understand the subject. They shouldn't turn the subject into a kind of God, so difficult only they themselves can interpret it.
Ms. Architect, I'll have you hold. I would need to continue with the discussion, move away a little bit away from mathematics and talk generally about what we can do to strengthen our educational system. Let me return to Professor Anku, who is still on the line. Prof, and now we've seen you've led us to actually isolate the problem, that we make the teaching of mathematics too much based on theory, and that we need to focus on methodology and all of it as well. What can we do to reverse this negative trend?
What we can do is what I've started doing by retraining the teachers, getting them transformed to see the new way that is effective. I was talking of practical mathematics.
That's right.
Every topic in mathematics can be activity-based. You see, we don't tell students the area of a circle is pi r squared. We let them go to come and develop the area, the formula themselves. We let them realize that, what is pi? You must take the circumference of the circle and divide it by the diameter. You do several of them, and you have a value which is a constant. And that's what you call pi. Pi is not magical. It's not coming from space. It's a number we develop ourselves by finding the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. After that, we take a circular object, transform it to something rectangular, because you can easily find the area of a rectangle. When we transform the circular thing into rectangle, we can also find that area to be pi r as the length, and then r as the width, and then pi r times r gives you pi r squared. They cut the circle and arrange it to become a rectangle, and they easily get pi r squared, which they understand. They never forget it. They are so excited about it. So every subject you teach, every topic you teach in mathematics can be made activity-based. That's what I do to my teachers who come for professional development. We've done it for teachers from Upper East, Upper West, Brong-Ahafo, Ashanti region. We have done for 3 recently. So we've covered 7 regions for training of trainers, which we expect that they will go back to go and help the other colleagues who couldn't come here. But you see, there's a problem. Problem is, it comes to funding. When we did this one, the last one, it was postponed 2 times before we were able to do it recently. And after that, you see, there are other issues, like when we're having this workshop, the coordinators were not part, that's the mathematics coordinators, were not part of the workshop. So who is going to monitor the teachers after they left here, that they are doing the right thing? You see, we've got a myriad of problems that we've got to sit together and solve if we want to make a difference. I keep saying all the time, mathematics is not difficult. There's no reason for us to be failing as we are doing. No reason at all.
Prof, we're grateful for your time, Prof. Professor Uncle. We have to move on the discussion, and we're extremely grateful you are telling us that the best approach is to simplify the teaching of mathematics. Let's move on to other forms of the discussion involving the falling trend of maths and science teaching in our educational system. IKJC is still on the line. So, Mr. JC, I wanted to digress a little bit from maths and science. You said that it's not only maths and science which is suffering, but everything else. Does it look like, as a country, we have lost the plot in prioritizing what is necessary or important for our educational system?
No, I think the problem is that the basic is weak. No, and when the foundation is weak, the superstructure is going to be weak. Who are the teachers today handling basic education? Who are the school children? Are they interested? What about the community, the home? You know, the education enterprise doesn't take place just in the school environment. It takes in a lot of territory. The home, the children, the whole society. Are the children learning in an environment where people are interested in education, or where they feel that children should go to the farm or to the sea? The teachers, the availability or non-availability of teaching and learning materials. Above all, supervision. Supervision is key. Most people, I will say, do better under supervision. One or two people may be able to work on their own. But generally speaking, we need supervision. That is why you have a general manager, I believe, at Joy. That is why you have a manager here to ensure that those assigned certain tasks carry out those tasks. Is that what is happening in our schools today?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Right, I can just, we'll have you hold. We're getting onto the line, Anis Hafa, who is also an educationist, to have a chat. Right, so we don't have Anis online. Anis Hafa will be joining us so that we explore further some of the fundamental problems facing education. We still have IKJC, though, on the line. So, Mr. Jesse, you have been an administrator, you have been a headmaster, you have, being an educational director. Do you think that, in fact, we can turn things around? Because I'm asking this on the back of the fact that if we take mathematics and sciences, for example, I was a science student all through till I finished sixth form, where I did physics, chemistry, and biology. I did art maths at O level, and then I couldn't make stronger grade for me to do mathematics at sixth form. But one of the things which discouraged me from continuing with sciences was that when I got admission to study physics at the University of Ghana, for example, I didn't have a clue what physics will lead me to in terms of career options. I could only end up in the classroom, really. There were not sufficient industries to absorb a physics graduate, for example. In Ghana, if a few places existed at the Atomic Energy or other institutions which can take a mathematics or physics graduate, I didn't have any hope of continuing. Do you not think that that's also the reason that many people are discouraged from taking on maths and science further?
You are introducing a new element. There was a time when, even if I'm not downgrading the subject, if you did classics, you were assured of a job in government, even if you didn't want to continue further. You get my point?
Yes.
No matter what you did, physics, anthropology, classics, history, law, you were sure of a place in the civil service. That is an entirely different thing. What we must understand is that the child interested in the subject, not whether after school he is going to be in this or that. You said your maths probably wasn't very strong. And without maths, there is no way you can do physics, chemistry, biology at a certain level.
Yeah.
So you were talking of what the future lay was there for you. But we are talking of a more fundamental principle. Were you a good student?
I was a good student.
And if you were a good student, it was partly because God had given you the brain, partly, I believe, because you had teachers who knew the subject and were willing to help you develop interest in the subject. You see?
Yes.
And there had been a time when if a teacher missed a class, he made sure that he made it up for the students afterwards. Because a teacher was very proud to be able to say, of the 30 students who took part in the examination, only one failed, and I knew that that boy would fail. Do we still have that kind of pride? No, in knowing that your students have passed? Are we ourselves as teachers knowledgeable in the very subject we are going to teach? Are we interested in the profession? Did we come into the profession because there was no alternative? I'm sorry, I cannot. I was going to speak, but let me say,
yeah, I know.
Teacher be near. Teacher be near.
Exactly.
All right, let me take up teaching as a temporary.
So that's also one of the biggest problems facing the educational sector in Ghana, because we are getting those who didn't get mainstream universities of their choice, and then they just opted to go into teaching as an option. Do you think that we as a country can change that, that we must make the learning to become a teacher very competitive enough to get the very best?
Very competitive and very respected, very competitive, very respected, well paid.
But how can we do that? Where should we start from?
We must break the cycle somewhere. As you say, it seems as if a whole lot of people would choose other subjects, other areas, not teaching, and that they would go into teaching because there was no alternative. If the conditions were such that, getting into training college was not going to be easy, if after training college or what would they call it, the university, whatever, the prospects were very bright, pay was good, motivation was good. No, I've talked of a mental block for people. There's also a general mental block. Two persons are introduced. One is a lawyer, one is a teacher. Who gave the respect?
The lawyer, of course.
The lawyer. No, teacher. Well, that is also good.
Right. Mr. Aikejesi, let me ask you a final question before we leave you. There is the notion that without science and maths, we can't really get anywhere as a country. But we also do know that many people have gone on to have tremendous careers in other areas without necessarily focusing on science and maths. So in this direction, how do we, Ghana, compare with Singapore, for example?
You say individuals. Talk about the country as a whole and not what individuals have achieved in certain fields, say law, whatever. We need, yes, in the modern world, we need science. I never got introduced to what? Computer, because it didn't exist in my time. Are you saying that because I managed to go through school, go to university, become a headmaster and retire as a headmaster, we don't need computers today?
Not at all.
So math, science are very, very important. Others, in fact, language, my friend, the bigger problem is grasping the language of communication. Because you enter the examination hall, even the local language paper is set in English. In our case, I'm talking of our case. So if the child himself doesn't even understand what we call the reading question, how is he going to be able to make progress? There's a difference between reduced to 4 and reduced by 4. You are going to get different answers. Reduced to 4, you get 4. If it's 10, reduced by 4, you will get sex. I'm saying that everything is going down, not just science and math. And unless we make great efforts to improve the educational system, we are getting nowhere.
Right. Ms. Ike, we're grateful for your time on today's big story. We tried to get Anis Hafa, who is also on education, to share his perspective on some of the fundamental problems that face education in this country, but we didn't get him on the line. So that's why we draw the curtains. My name is Stephen Enti, and we'll be back with Joy News Interactive. Do stay.